5 Fatal Mistakes of Atahualpa that changed the history of the Inca Empire. Did you know that Atahualpa, the last Inca emperor, made several strategic mistakes that sealed the fate of his empire? From underestimating the number of conquistadors to failing to recognize the psychological warfare used by the Spaniards, these key mistakes led to the collapse of one of the most powerful civilizations in the Americas. Discover how these fatal decisions changed the course of history and led to the fall of the Inca Empire. 1. Underestimating the number of Spaniards and their indigenous allies. According to chronicler Juan de Betanzos, Atahualpa, like many indigenous leaders, underestimated not only the capabilities of the Spaniards but also the number and influence of the indigenous peoples who had allied with them. Although chronicles mention that Atahualpa was informed by his spies and generals, he did not recognize the gravity of the situation, thinking that the Spaniards and their allies did not pose a serious threat. Pizarro departed from Tumbes with 168 men and approximately 1,000 indigenous allies, mainly from ethnic groups that were in conflict with the Inca Empire, such as the Chachapoyas, Huancas, Canaris, and other Andean peoples. In 1532, he ventured into the interior of Peruvian territory, heading north to Cajamarca, in search of a meeting with Atahualpa. 2. Not anticipating a rapid offensive. Despite warnings from his spies, Atahualpa did not launch a swift offensive against the Spaniards when they entered his territory, arriving in Cajamarca. Indigenous allies, such as the Cajamarcas, informed him about the presence of the conquistadors, but Atahualpa chose not to act quickly. This delay allowed the Spaniards to approach Cajamarca without facing significant resistance. Chronicler Pedro Cieza de Leon, in La Crónica del Perú, mentions that Atahualpa received news of the Spaniards' arrival and the alliance of indigenous peoples, but he did not make quick decisions, which allowed Pizarro to advance without strong opposition. 3. Not seizing the opportunity to ambush the Spaniards. Atahualpa was warned by his spy Siquincura, who informed him that the Spaniards were advancing toward Cajamarca. Despite suggestions from his generals and allies to ambush the Spaniards before they arrived, Atahualpa did not act. This was one of his greatest mistakes, as it gave Pizarro the opportunity to reach Cajamarca and take the city with little resistance. Chronicler Francisco de Jerez recounts how the warnings from Inca generals, especially regarding a possible ambush, were ignored by Atahualpa. His lack of action allowed the Spaniards to consolidate their presence in Cajamarca. 4. Not recognizing the psychological warfare of the Spaniards. The psychological warfare of the Spaniards, especially the tactic of displaying technological superiority and power, also played a crucial role. Atahualpa, influenced by his perception of the Spaniards' divinity and his own pride, did not grasp the magnitude of the danger in time. The presence of cavalry, cannons, and Pizarro's experience weakened the morale of the Incas. Chronicler Bernardo de Vargas Machuca, in his Historia de la Conquista del Perú, states that Atahualpa did not understand the psychology of war that the Spaniards employed, which led him to a fatal underestimation. 5. The lack of cohesion in the military response. Finally, Atahualpa made a critical mistake by lacking cohesion in his military response. He did not organize an effective defense against the Spaniards, nor did he use the advantage of the terrain or his forces to neutralize the threat. Instead of unifying his troops into a strong resistance, his decisions were ambiguous, and his actions were slow. Chronicler Diego de Trujillo, in Comentarios, mentions that Atahualpa did not organize an effective resistance. The lack of unity among his generals and the absence of a coordinated action allowed the conquistadors to take control with little opposition, which led to his capture without significant defensive efforts. Final summary. Historical chronicles indicate that the underestimation of Spanish resources and the number of indigenous allies, the lack of a swift response to the presence of the conquistadors, and the absence of unity in defense were fatal mistakes for Atahualpa. Additionally, failing to recognize psychological warfare and the opportunity to ambush the Spaniards allowed Francisco Pizarro and his small force to achieve one of the most astonishing victories in history. Each of these mistakes is reflected in the testimonies of chroniclers, who describe how Atahualpa's excessive confidence in his power and his failure to act early were key factors in the defeat of the Inca Empire. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to give it a like, activate the notification bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel to enjoy more fascinating content. Thank you very much, and blessings.